Banachek's Mind Games Live, taking mind reading to new heights at the Strat Hotel, Casino, and Skypod Las Vegas.
Dust off your platform shoes and polyester leisure suits, as it's time to hit the dance floor at the Australian Bee Gees Show. Paying tribute to one of the most beloved bands of our time, you'll enjoy all the hits like Staying Alive, Jive Talking, How Deep Is Your Love, and many others.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program's participants and do not necessarily reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go. Basham.
Liberalism is back in style. Welcome to the evolution.
Hi, this is Helen Thomas, columnist for Hearst newspapers. I've covered the White House since 1961, and I've had a great opportunity to get some bashing myself on the Doug Basham show, and I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm back, bitches! What if you knew Fox News was just lying to you? How could you watch when you know?
He was voted Variety Entertainer of the Year in the Excellence in the Arts Awards and is one of the highest Arbitron, now Nielsen-rated talk radio hosts in Las Vegas. He is also a refreshing voice of logic and reason. Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Doug Basham.
Raise a little hell, raise a little hell.
I know words, I have the best words. I love the poorly educated.
Right under the toilet.
And good morning, my fellow wokes and Republican jokes. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Doug Basham, and welcome to the Doug Basham Show right here on KSHP in Las Vegas and on social media, and to a genuine demonstration of excellence in broadcasting. The website is DougBasham.com. Last name spelled B as in Bob, A-S-H-A-M as in Mary. DougBasham.com. My email, Doug@DougBasham.com. Hey, if you are new to the show, here's what you need to know. My website is all of one page. That's it. You'll find the show's logo at the top. Underneath, you'll find links to everything associated with this show, including links to all the social media sites on which we broadcast the show live. But here's the only one you really need. Click on the YouTube icon. Once there, click on the link that says live. There you can watch the show live, or you can view the archive shows. 2 clicks, that's it. Oh, and while you're on my YouTube page, if you could manage a 3rd click and click on the subscribe link, I would be eternally grateful. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you want to talk on the radio in our second half hour, that's 702-221-SAVE, as in save our democracy, which is our ultimate and only goal in each and every show we do. Lock him up. We invoked Mitt Romney's name in the past couple days for his comments on the death threats people have been receiving courtesy of Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base. Quick shout out to Mitt and his wife, Ann, who went out last night for Halloween as Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Very creative. And you know, Mitt looks like he'd be up for a down or two on the gridiron, doesn't he? And the best line Mitten's ever had was when he said all Donald Trump's wives were foreigners. He then said, quote, turns out there are some jobs Americans won't do, end quote. Well done, Willard Mittens Romney. Last night was also the first time in months that Melania Trump was seen in public with her betrothed.
And then you have this happy couple, Don and Milan, who partied it up with all the Mar-a-Lago ghouls. This is the first time Melania has been seen with her husband in many months. The Trumps were, as you can see, not in costume. If I was Melania, I would have gone as Stormy Daniels, just to mess with him, right? Maybe give him his first erection since January 6th. Who knows?
As for our Trump brain-dead MAGA cult base dumbass of the day, this is the first time we owe this particular dumbass some thanks as well for once again proving beyond a shadow of a doubt how today's QOP is not only infested with liars, but also how they champion liars, their lies, and their inherent dishonesty. Last night, the House QOP had a chance to expel a guy who is a pathological liar and is now facing 23 federal fraud felony charges, including aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, and credit card fraud. And for what it's worth, his campaign treasurer, who's also wrapped up in this case, has already pleaded guilty. And of course, I'm speaking of none other than George Santos. And of course, they refused to dump him. I've told you recently that NBC reporter Ali Vitale has become one of my favorite reporters. Here's another reason why. And in this clip, she also reports, I think, some disturbing behavior from the QOP's new House Speaker, MAGA Mike Johnson.
And I think that for Santos, the reason Republicans have slow-walked this for so long is because their majority is already razor thin. It would be like going from a 3-blade razor to a 2-blade razor, and they need all of the shave that they can get. So this is not something they're willing to go along with easily. It's why we've seen, even just in the last few minutes, Speaker Johnson walked by me just 2 minutes before I came on the air with you, and I asked him if Santos should be expelled, and he sort of shook his head and laughed at me for even asking the question. That's the way that most leadership have dealt with this, from McCarthy through Johnson now.
Of course he laughed at you. How could they remove Santos from the House when the titular head of their party is an even bigger pathological liar who's facing 91 felony charges, including some under the Espionage Act? George Santos is small time compared to the Orange Trader. 23 felony charges? Pfft, look at how many our leading candidate for president has. And when Santos has told over 30,500 lies in just 4 years, then we'll talk. Or actually, we won't, because we don't expel anyone who tells that staggering amount of lies. We nominate them. And while we do thank George Santos for reaffirming what we real-world dwellers already knew with regards to the QOP and their embrace of liars and their lies, that doesn't prevent him from becoming our Trump brain-dead MAGA cult base dumbass of the day. And I put together something a little extra special for Mr. Santos today.
Mr. Santos, do you intend to serve both years of your term? Can you speak to any of the concerns about your biography, about what you've told folks about your background?
What's your name today? Is it Anthony DeVolder or is it George Santos? Do you think anyone in New York actually trusts you? Do you have any idea what you're doing today? Are you pretending to look at your phone?
Well, my colleague Anthony D'Esposito introduced a privileged resolution on Thursday of last week to expel George Santos from Congress, in large part because, this has been a disgraceful episode in the history of Congress. George Santos lied his way here, and his conduct has been embarrassing.
What is happening in Israel is abhorrent. That's what it is.
Sorry.
I'm sorry I was a douchebag the first
first time you met me. I'm so sorry I was a big fat jerk. The time, will you know it? Dear Mr. Douchebag, we all agree that you are a dumbass. Why can't you see that?
You're a douchebag. Douchebag.
I'm a douchebag who thinks he's so smooth. Everyone's dancing, except me, I'm way too good. 'Cause I'm a scumbag who wrote this concept. Nothing happening makes any damn sense. Another douchebag, another douchebag, another douchebag. Don't be a douchebag. Don't be a douchebag. Don't be a douchebag. I'm a douchebag. Did somebody call for a douchebag? I'm here hanging out with my douchebag friends, and we're all holding drinks just to prove that we party tonight. Oh, I'm a douchebag. I'm the king of all douches. I'm a douchebag. How about some loving for the douchebag? It ain't easy being cheesy, but a douche is all I know how to be. Oh, I'm a douchebag. You will always be 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 a douchebag.
You dumbass. And here's something interesting that happened yesterday with Santos. It was his turn to speak, but Democratic Congressman and rising Democratic star Dan Goldman asked Santos for his time. And lo and behold, Santos gave it to him. Why? I have no idea. Dan Goldman was part of the Democratic group that brought a motion to expel Santos back in May. I mean, what did Santos honestly think Goldman was going to say about him? But Santos did give his time to Dan Goldman. You'll hear him do it at the beginning of this clip. And this was his reward. Suffice it to say, this was brutal.
Mr. Chair, I yield 5 minutes to my colleague from New York, Mr. Goldman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santos. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of this resolution to expel George Santos from Congress, as I did in May when I co-sponsored a similar expulsion resolution that the sponsors of today's resolution, my Republican colleagues from New York, did not support. I agree with everything that my Republican colleagues have said here today, but everything they have said here today was also true in May when they voted to protect George Santos. Has there been anything that has changed? Nothing about the numerous lies that Mr. Santos admitted himself to making in order to deceive his voters into electing him. Nothing about his status as an indicted criminal defendant. Yes, there has been a superseding indictment with more allegations of criminal conduct. Nothing has changed from the Ethics Committee, even though one of my colleagues from New York said that the Ethics Committee would expedite its investigation and release a report 60 days from the date of that May vote. Well, we are now 175 days since then, and there is no ethics report that would prompt a change of heart. One thing that has changed is that Mr. Santos's campaign treasurer pled guilty to fraud and admitted under oath that she conspired with Mr. Santos to fabricate a non-existent $500,000 loan to his campaign. But the resolution drafted by my friends from New York does not even mention that new fact. George Santos hangs like an albatross around the necks of every single Republican from New York. They don't care anymore today about integrity or morality or the reputation of this institution than they did in May when they voted to protect Mr. Santos. They just care about their reelection in 1 year. One of my colleagues says, "We will hold members accountable." You are the party of George Santos. Who are you holding accountable?
The guy is an alleged and acknowledged liar and indicted, and you protect him every day. Don't lecture us with your projection and your defense of Donald Trump. It's pathetic, and it's beneath you, and it's beneath this body, and I yield back.
Damn, I told you that was brutal. And remember, George Santos gave up his speaking time to the gentleman you just heard, the Democratic congressman from New York, Dan Goldman. I mean, does this guy have a congressional death wish? And of course, who do you think jumped to the defense of our dumbass of the day? Why, two-time past dumbass of the day, Marjorie Trader Trash 8 Toes Green. She tweeted, quote, George Santos is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I will not vote to expel him today, end quote. Dumbasses of a feather? And always showing his flair for the dramatic, drama queen George Santos offered this.
I have a right of the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. I'm fighting for that right. And if these guys don't believe in that, then democracy's dead. I came into this world alone. If I'm going to go out of here, I came into this body alone. I'll go out.
Wow. First, it is jarring to hear someone in Donald Trump's QOP say that the way he's being treated is reflective of democracy being dead. Truly astonishing, not to mention a perfect example of typical QOP complete lack of awareness. Some call this hypocrisy, others call it sheer stupidity. Second, drama queen much? I came into this world alone. I came into this body alone. I'll go out alone. One of my very favorites in Congress, the Democratic Congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, was asked about what you just heard Santos say.
What do you think about the argument he's making?
As somebody who's practiced law, you know, when it comes to a criminal courthouse, there's one standard. When it comes to serving in the people's house, there's a different standard. And, you know, obviously today, the members of the House decided that they weren't going to kick him out. This would not necessarily disrupt his right to have a jury trial, his right to be presumed innocent whatsoever. But I think that there is a lower bar. It's just like when we look at a civil case, there is a lower bar. It's preponderance, by the preponderance of the evidence. I think that there is a lower bar because there are only 435 of us that serve in this body. That means that we are in a select group of people and we have to have the highest standards. I know it may not seem like it sometimes when you look at the likes of a Bovard or a Marjorie Taylor Greene. I get it, right? But technically, like when we look at the history of this organization, it should not be one that is full of George Santos's. And honestly, you know, I knew that this would never pass. We always knew that it would never pass. But it was important to go ahead and bring out the distinction because as we listen to them talk about the Biden crime family and there's no evidence of anything. I mean, let's talk about pot calling kettle black. I mean, what we see is a party that is full of hypocrisy, that is full of all the con artists, the frauds that you can find, and they don't want to do anything about that. But find somebody that you literally have nothing on, then we end up with scandals like Obama and his tan suit. We end up with nonsense. And it's time out for that. So this was a real test for them. So we'll see how they act going forward on their morality.
And just remember this, Trumpers, as it pertains to George Santos, if they can treat an astronaut who won the Super Bowl and the U.S. Open and invented penicillin in his spare time this way, just imagine how they can treat you. Most people do things for the love of God. George Santos and Donald Trump do things for the love of fraud. And speaking of QOP liars, and really, when aren't we? We now turn our attention to the GOP congressman from Colorado, Ken Buck. And what I like about this clip is that Buck addresses our new norm that we have been addressing the past couple days on this show, death threats. We'll hear the question he's asked and his response. And further to my ongoing criticism of today's legitimate media's timidity and flaccidness when questioning anything Trump related, listen to how timidly This host asks her question.
Trump himself even saying that he was going to hold a press conference on Monday to further those lies. Now he's saying he won't do that. But do you wonder, or do you think that when you just think about that, do you ever wonder about just the mental fitness of a person who believes those lies, even though he's told that they're not true, and whether that person should be the one who is potentially in the White House next?
Good God. Do you ever wonder about just the mental fitness of a person who believes those lies, even though he's been told they're not true, and whether that person should be the one who's potentially in the White House next? Don't hit me, don't hurt me. I'm surprised she didn't slither off her chair and disappear under her desk. What a faint-hearted way to ask a question. Now we'll hear Ken Buck's response, which I gave an A+ at the time.
Do you ever wonder about just the mental fitness of a person who believes those lies, even though he's told that they're not true, and whether that person should be the one who is potentially in the White House next?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, the discussion that you had earlier about this threats that are being made and other actions towards grand jurors and people who are just doing their civic duty, showing up and doing their job as Americans is despicable. And if you're innocent, start acting like it. I can't think of anything worse than trying to attack the criminal justice system because you're a criminal defendant. And I think that's just terrible of any defendant to go through that process.
Ken Buck made headlines yesterday by announcing he would not run for re-election next year. And the reason I found these remarks interesting is because, yes, he went after his own party for lying, but while lying himself in his remarks. You see, these QOP legislators get all caught up in their medias and their own talking points / lies, and they just can't help themselves. Let's listen to what Buck said.
Hi, this is Congressman Ken Buck. After careful consideration and much prayer, I have decided not to seek a 6th term in the U.S. House of Representatives. To the people of Colorado's 4th Congressional District, thank you for sending me to Congress. I'm grateful for your support as we have fought against the left's policies that have had real-world consequences, defunding the police, politicizing student loans, provoking inflation with excessive spending, creating open borders, decimating our domestic energy production.
First, defunding the police isn't a thing, and Joe Biden ran on increasing the amount of funding for law enforcement. As for politicizing student loans, I don't even know what that means, and frankly, I don't care. Provoking inflation, that's just another quaint phrase designed to help them ignore the fact that inflation is a global issue and not one germane to Joe Biden or the left's policies, which, by the way, have done some amazing things. Because of the American Rescue Act, we have seen the fastest growing economy in decades, along with the lowest unemployment rate in decades. Our GDP surged by roughly 6%, a level not seen since the 1980s, as the unemployment rate plummeted and the number of new small businesses soared. In fact, we have had the fastest post-COVID recovery among the group of 7 industrialized Western economies. Unions are stronger under Biden. Here's what Trump had to say regarding the recent UAW strike while speaking at a non-union place and huddling with owners, not workers.
Your current negotiations don't mean as much as you think. I mean, I watch you out there with the pickets, but I don't think you're picketing for the right thing.
With the news in recent days that the UAW strike may indeed be over, I think we can safely say that as it pertains to unions, Joe Biden won, Trump 0. Biden has also signed 3 sweeping economic laws aimed in part at reviving U.S. manufacturing. One to bolster the domestic semiconductor industry, another to repair the nation's crumbling infrastructure, and a third to spur the clean energy industry. These bills have other key goals. The Inflation Reduction Act took aim at climate change, and the infrastructure law was primarily intended to improve decaying public works. These efforts are working even before most of the money has been even spent. The Treasury Department has found spending on manufacturing plants has exploded with a particular boom in electronics and computers. And taking advantage of the generous new credits, clean energy firms are rushing to construct new plants and facilities, spending billions in new investment across the country. Yeah, there have been hiccups and challenges along the way, but this is what you call governing. Whether you like the policies or not, Joe Biden won the election. He is enacting his agenda, his policies. Again, it's called governing. And governing for the majority of the American people, a concept apparently foreign to today's QOP. Biden, on the other hand, has been trying to mute the power of large corporations, particularly by breaking up monopolies and cracking down on junk fees. Again, that's called governing for the American people. What has the QOP been doing? They complain about gas. They complain about inflation. They complain about the border. They complain about everything. What do? Oh, let's look at Hunter Biden's laptop. Losers. The least successful part of Bidenomics has arguably been the president's attempts to expand the U.S. safety net. But that doesn't mean he hasn't tried. He has. He has tried for the biggest expansion of social programs since the 1960s, including new child care benefits, housing subsidies for the poor, and new dental benefits for seniors. And Biden will keep trying because he understands better than most that's how you govern. Sometimes it irritates me how much he understands that. Sometimes I wish he would take a break from governing, and just go into the press briefing room and let him have it. And maybe do a little bragging about what he's done. Trump bragged about what he hadn't done and lied every day. Joe, take a break. Go tell people what you're doing, because a lot of them don't pay attention and they don't know what you're doing. Tell them you are governing. Tell them the reason you don't see me out here every day blowing my own horn is because I'm busy getting stuff done. Tell them. But now back to Ken Buck's next line. The border. Oh, yeah, open border. Yeah, the border is not open. As for him saying Biden's policies have decimated our domestic energy production, that is a flat out lie, and one that's been bugging me for a while, but I've never vented on it. Today, we vent. A story in Bloomberg just yesterday carried the headline, quote, record high U.S. oil production surpasses 13 million barrels a day, end quote. But it was the subheadline that caught my immediate attention. Quote, August output beats previous records set in November 2019. And end quote. And why did that catch my eye? Because that was the year that in some months, not all, but some, the United States achieved what Trump likes to brag and say was energy independence, a term I have since come to learn that most members of Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base have no clue what it even means. Why? Because their media doesn't tell them what it means. They just say, oh, we were energy independent under Trump. And not one of them says, hey, what does that mean? They tell them that under Trump, well, no need to correct. They tell them that under Trump, we achieved energy independence, and that's all they tell them. And thus, that's all they know. And that's all they repeat on the right-wing websites on which I lurk from time to time because I like to fight with MAGAs. But when someone posts that talking point, we were energy independent under President Trump, I very politely ask, and what is your understanding of what energy independence means? Thus far, not one has responded. A, because they're too lazy to do a Google search, or B, if they do, the results don't suit their agenda and lies. But yeah, we did achieve energy independence in 2019, but as I said, not for the entire year. That is a stat that's measured monthly, not yearly. And for a few months we were. And all that term means is we produced more energy than we used. That's it. But what Trump's basis media doesn't tell their audience is that A, that doesn't mean that we still didn't import foreign oil, because we did and do, nor do they tell them that we're still reliant on foreign oil, which we were and are. In that same year of 2019, and this is according to data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, or the EIA, we imported 9.1 million barrels per day of oil from about 90 countries, while at the same time, we exported 8.5 million barrels a day to approximately 190 countries. So you see, even though in some months we were quote unquote energy independent, for the year we imported more oil than we exported. The right-wing propaganda hate media also doesn't tell their audience that A, or I should say B, in 2020, when Trump was president, we did not achieve energy independence. This is 2020. And in fact, our oil production fell by around 8% relative to 2019. But here's the deal. Trump had no more control over that, ignoring his homicidal response to the pandemic, than he did over us achieving briefly energy independence the year before. And according to the EIA, again, the Energy Information Administration, the energy independence experienced by the U.S. in 2019 was driven by record levels of total fossil fuel exports from the U.S., but that record was set as part of a long-term trend dating back to 2006. And that trend continued no matter who the president was. Bottom line, neither the president nor their policies have had a significant demand on the market compared to other global factors. Presently, global demand remains depressed, and U.S. oil production has been dropping off since 2020, when Trump was still in office. But like I said, the rights media never tells them facts like this, and so the QOP have their talking points /lies, and they can't help themselves. Sorry to go on like that, but this energy independence canard has been bugging me for a while, especially when I discovered that Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base had no clue what it even meant. That and the Keystone Pipeline canard and lie, and don't get me started on that. Back to Ken Buck. He continued.
Americans are rightfully concerned about our nation's future and are looking to Republicans in Washington for a course correction. But their hope for Republicans to take decisive action may be in vain. Our nation is on a collision course with reality, and a steadfast commitment to truth, even uncomfortable truths, is the only way forward.
Says the man who we just heard lie about very effective Democratic policies. But hey, no worries. Ken Buck is seriously about to redeem himself right here, right now. Listen to what he says next.
And a steadfast commitment to truth, even uncomfortable truths, is the only way forward. Too many Republican leaders are lying to America.
Wait a minute. Are my ears deceiving me? Let me hear that again.
Too many Republican leaders are lying to America. Too many Republican leaders are lying to America. Too many Republican leaders are lying to America.
Just checking, and now Ken Buck totally redeems himself.
Too many Republican leaders are lying to America, claiming that the 2020 election was stolen, describing January 6th as an unguided tour of the Capitol, and asserting that the ensuing prosecutions are a weaponization of our justice system. These insidious narratives breed widespread cynicism and erode Americans' confidence in the rule of law. It is impossible for the Republican Party to confront our problems and offer a course correction for the future while being obsessively fixated on retribution and vengeance for contrived injustices of the past.
I told you. And kudos to Ken Buck for at least a partially and brutally honest dissertation. In today's QOP, that is both refreshing and a rarity. I mentioned back on Monday that this was the week Trump's 3 demon seeds would be testifying in his New York financial fraud trial. Fail's son Don Jr. on Wednesday, that was yesterday, Eric today, Trump's daughter wife on Friday, and then Trump himself on Monday. Ivanka's testimony has been rescheduled for next week, but Don Jr. did testify yesterday and Eric today. And you might recall, as I just did, I referred to Ivanka as Trump's daughter wife, and back on Monday, I called Trump Ivanka's father husband. Former Solicitor General under Barack Obama was asked about Ivanka testifying, and he said much the same thing as I did, only he didn't mean to, at least not out loud.
So I agree with Andrew. I think it's Rudy Giuliani is the target. The thing to watch just in the next week is not someone who's going to fold, but Ivanka Trump testifying against her husband, against her father, compelled by the court. And basically it's the old legal adage, those families who commit crime together testify together.
You see? I'm not the only one who makes snide remarks regarding Trump and his daughter, even if Neil Katyal's was inadvertent. And many pundits have commented on the fact that this New York financial trial poses no risk of jail time for Trump. It's a civil trial. And yet this seems to be the one he's most fixated on. He's already attended it several times, even though he isn't required to. Now, of course, he lies and says he's being forced to attend. But again, what would you expect from a congenital, pathological liar? George Conway, soon-to-be ex-husband of Trump whisperer Kellyanne con artist, offered this take on why Trump is so concerned with his New York trial.
This puts him out of business. This case is putting him out of business. Even if... Yeah, absolutely, and that's his essence, and I think that he's terrified that he's not going to have the Trump Tower anymore. He's not going to have all the things that he has bragged about for decades, for his 60, for 6 decades, that's going to be gone, and he won't be able to run a business. And the question is, how much money is he going to be allowed to keep from that? And that to him that's striking at the core of Donald Trump.
Branding expert Donnie Deutsch, who has known Donald Trump for literally decades, added this to the mix.
The judge implicitly has concluded some of it involved fraud. The reason I say it's so perilous, and frankly, they would be well advised to just plead the fifth. Nobody wants to plead the fifth because it's not a good look in the court of public opinion. But even more importantly,
everybody in New York, if you were any way connected to business or real estate or commerce,
Trump,
knew that he was a scam. That whatever was said was exaggerated, lied about. That he, I always say this: if you went up to his office, it is not what you see in The Apprentice. The boardroom was a set. It's this little beat up, tawdry, musty office with 20 or 30 people. It's a licensing company. So this whole braggadocio about him and his great wealth and his great success was so over exaggerated. So, and I think George Conway said it best, and you use that word essence in the open. His essence is I'm big, I'm strong, I'm successful, I'm powerful. And this just puts a pin in that balloon and it just goes. This is getting to him. A normal person, and we know he's not normal, would be more afraid of jail time and would be more afraid of what's going on January 6th and what's going on with the documents. But to him, this is his being. This is his sense of self. This is his size, if you know what I mean, how big he is. I find it interesting that he's there also. Like, why is he there? He doesn't need to. I think it's what we're talking about. I think he just needs to be there sneering. Oh, by the way, a little sidebar. My favorite anecdote of the week. I spoke to Michael Cohen yesterday. I said, so what happened when you saw him face to face? He goes, I winked at him. So there you go. The cameras, unfortunately, were not able to catch Michael Cohen winking at Donald Trump. That's something I would have paid for.
And I don't know what Eric testified to today, but this is from his deposition, and it kind of demonstrated why he's often referred to as the dumb one in the family.
It's extremely inconsistent with what my role is at the company. I just don't, I think I was very kind of clear that, to the best of my knowledge, I really haven't been involved in appraisal work on this property.
Well, are you saying that this engagement could have happened without your knowledge and approval?
I'm just saying I don't remember this. I'm not on here. I never signed this document.
Eric went on to say, quote, I don't recall this. I pour concrete. I manage properties. I don't focus on appraisals. It's not what I do in my day-to-day responsibilities, end quote. Suzanne Craig, investigative reporter extraordinaire for the New York Times, a Pulitzer Prize winner for her reporting on the Trump finances, responded to Eric's deposition.
I don't think Eric Trump was out pouring concrete. I mean, so what was he doing?
That one.
I mean, the last time they had a new project was 2008. So, and in terms of a full construction project, I mean, they've done some rehabs and stuff like that since. But he shouldn't be pouring concrete if he's making that much money. So, what was he doing? And I think he's going to get a lot of pushback on the statements that he doesn't remember. They said it so many times. Eric's full deposition is out there. I've read it, and it was amazing how many times today he said he just couldn't remember. And these are properties like Seven Springs is one he was intimately involved with. He lived there for a time. He has a long history with it. I think the judge may find it hard to believe that he doesn't remember.
As for Fail's son, Don Jr., we are all used to watching him in what seems like cocaine-fueled rants on social media that are oftentimes more deranged and incoherent than his father's. But here's the caveat. Part of his deposition was released earlier this month. I watched it and I was shocked. He was lucid, he was eloquent, and he was as charming as could be. So much so that he had the lady who was questioning him giggling like a love-struck fangirl. Seriously. I mean, if he was like this all the time and wasn't, Donald Trump's fail son, you might find it difficult to dislike him. Here's part of that deposition.
Do you have any familiarity with an acronym GAP, G-A-A-P?
Generally accepted accounting principles, yes.
Okay. How did you become familiar with that acronym?
Probably in Accounting 101 at Wharton.
Okay. What do they teach you about generally accepted accounting principles in Wharton?
Well, I'm not an accountant, but that they are generally accepted.
Anything else?
That's pretty much what I remember from Accounting 101. So.
Have you told me everything you know about GAP?
Basically, I'm sure I could come up with some creative stuff to kill time, but I'd be doing neither of us a favor in terms of educating ourselves.
You see what I mean? He had that girl eaten out of his hand, and she was supposed to be grilling him. Now, I have no illusions that when he testified yesterday and finished today, he was forthcoming. In fact, it's already been said he may have set himself up for criminal charges, not civil, but who knows? I thought he'd take the fifth. I mean, that's what his father and brother have already done, but we'll wait and see. He did have this to say when he showed up yesterday and the cameras started snapping photos of him.
I should have worn makeup.
Well, Lord knows your trashy girlfriend has enough she could lend you some.
Basham!
Late night host Jimmy Kimmel, of course, had to weigh in on Junior's court appearance.
Don Jr. was not at Daddy Donald's last night. The prodigal son was being grilled as part of the $250 million case against their business. There he is, Tiny Soprano. I wonder what's going through his head right now.
I should have worn makeup.
No, you don't need it. Everybody knows you're a clown. I'm kidding.
Good one. Here's the thing about Don Jr. What he lacks in intelligence, he also lacks in charisma. So, and as with all cases involving the family Trump, DJ TJ was sworn in on an upside-down Bible. So,
I will say this. Don Jr. didn't look anywhere near as comfortable nor as confident yesterday as he was during the deposition, part of which you heard before this last clip. If you haven't been following Trump's New York civil fraud trial, my gal Nicole Wallace gave as concise a summary of it as I've heard of late.
It gets to the heart of who Trump thinks he is, what he thinks his essence is all about. Donald Trump ran his 2016 presidential campaign on the ruse of his stature as a successful businessman. He bragged about deal-making skills and boasted about real estate holdings and a lavish lifestyle. And he dragged the whole family into it, right? Made it a family affair. His kids took on high-level positions at the Trump organization. And then he had his two older sons take the wheel when he went to the White House. But that successful businessman veneer was completely shattered forever when Judge Engoron found Trump and those at his business liable for fraud 1 month ago now. We have to keep in mind as we cover this trial that the trial underway is not to determine whether fraud was committed. That's been settled. That has been determined. The trial is about figuring out how much money and other stipulations will need to be paid as a consequence of that fraud that has been found. So this week brings that trial to a whole new level. Judge Engoron announced that the three eldest Trump kids and the ex-president himself will be called to testify over the course of this week and next, starting Wednesday. We do not know how forthcoming the children or the former president will be on the stand, but we can take a hint from their depositions. Last year, in a very like father, like son way, both Donald Trump and Eric Trump took the fifth hundreds and hundreds of times. The elder Trump invoked the Fifth Amendment 440 times. Eric Trump invoked it more than 500, which brings us back to the trial this week and what to expect. So far, 17 witnesses have been heard across 19 days. Trump and his former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, came face to face for the first time in 5 years. The ex-president was fined $15,000 for violating not one time, but 2 times the gag order placed on him. At one point, he totally freaked out, melted down, and angrily stomped out of the courtroom. So what's going to happen next? Members of his own family take the stand. We'll be watching.
Wow. As we have discussed in the past, Trump took the fifth 440 times, failed son Eric over 500 times. Now, I don't know what Eric did today. That was going on while I was getting ready and coming down here. I'll find out later. But if that's what Eric does today, and then again tomorrow when he finishes up, I don't see how that will play in their favor. They're not playing before a jury. They're playing before a judge who's already declared that they are guilty / liable for fraud. If they play the Fifth Amendment card, that ain't going to play well, at least in my opinion. Holy moly, where did the time go? It's 10 to noon. My apologies. The phone number is 221-7283. That's area code 702-221-SAVE. To the phones we charge, and we'll start with Big Bad John. You're first. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, John.
Oh, man, it's just a pleasure and an honor to talk to a real man. Someone who does tremendous show prep and knows what he's talking about. Not a girly man like Shapiro who won't let you get 2 sentences in before he has to jump all over you. Does Brian wear a pink or a purple dress when he does the show in the studio?
Oh, you're being unkind. Brian's my friend.
What a coward Shapiro is. Let me talk, you wuss. tuck your skirt and bunch it up and let someone you disagree with get more than 2 sentences and before you have a hernia, and take your hat off. You look like a fool. Anyway, hey, one other thing, Doug. Gary, I saw Costco has a sale on boxed Ripples and bus passes. So you might want to shoot over there and get your week's supply of Ripple and bus passes. You're a clown, Gary. But hey, look, on a serious note, this is devastating for Trump. I don't really think the public understands how devastating this is for the Trump organization. He's lost already.
Yeah.
This is only damages. And when you plead the fifth in a civil case in New York, the judge, the trier of fact, whoever's rendering the verdict, they can make an adverse inference. So they can say, Eric, we all know you're stupid. We know you're dumb. And the only reason you have that position is because you won the last name lottery. But we're not buying all this I don't recall crap. And in fact, not only we're not buying it, we're going to assume you're lying, pal. So the interesting part is going to come. You know, they've seized the interest. They can't operate it, but they're able to do it under a stay. But there's going to come a point when he can't operate that anymore.
Yeah.
And not only can he not operate it, he's going to have to probably sell some assets because he doesn't have $250 million in cash to pay the fine, the penalty that's coming down the road. So I don't think his liberty is not at stake, but this is a devastating blow, and I don't think there's anything he can do to stop it.
Let me ask you, John, do you think he's going to lose Trump Tower and Mar-a-Lago?
Well, Mar-a-Lago's not in New York. I think he's going to lose all the assets in New York. Yes.
Oh, okay, because I thought I had heard some buzz that there was a chance he could, well, maybe not lose Mar-a-Lago, but have to sell it, or it could be gobbled up.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
His business license to operate under a license under the law, by definition, is revocable. That's the whole point.
Right.
You will grant you a driver's license. You are able to drive on the streets. But if you abuse that, or if you drive intoxicated, what's up, Gary? Go get the Ripple, buddy. If you drive intoxicated too many times, we're going to revoke your license, and you no longer have the ability to drive on the streets. It's the same thing with a business.
Yeah.
We'll grant you a license. You can do business in New York. But once you're found to be a fraud, a complete and total fraud, who overestimates the value of his assets by just a ridiculous number. I mean, it wasn't 10 or 20%. It was like 1,000% he overinflated the value of his assets.
Yeah.
They can revoke his license, and then he's all done. You cannot do business in New York anymore. Bye-bye.
I got another question for you, John. What I don't understand, if you saw the rant he posted last night where he was calling the judge by his last name and saying things like, hey, Engoron, leave my children alone. You're a disgrace to the profession. What kind of person would think that would be the right approach to take to the guy that holds your testicles in his hand?
Yeah, that's his whole shtick, man. That's his whole shtick. He's a poker player. He'd be good at poker. First of all, he's freaking out. Okay. He's there because he knows, holy crap, my entire business empire is about to crumble right before my eyes. I should have never ran for president. I didn't really want to win. I just ran for PR purposes, and holy crap, the golden, the golden prize is 10,000 square foot apartment in Trump Town, not 30,000. Can you imagine how insecure? What's up, Shapiro? How insecure you must be to overinflate the value, the size of your apartment from 10 to 30,000 square feet. It's just ridiculous. So he's in trouble. He's ranting and raving because he knows he's in trouble, and he's in the court because he knows he's in trouble too. He's just trying to intimidate.
Well, I don't understand. If he honestly thinks that posts and threats like that are going to intimidate Judge Engoron, I think he is sadly mistaken, and he's going to pay an even bigger price than he might have normally, had to.
I agree. Can you imagine, man? I mean, I don't care how rich you are. Can you imagine writing a check for $250 million as a fine? Oh my God.
Yeah, if I ever wrote a check like that, I'd have to sign it with a swizzle stick. Hey, Big
All
John,
right,
I
Doug,
appreciate.
great show, man. You're the absolute best.
Hey, I appreciate you checking in, John. You take care. Yeah, folks.
All right, Doug, take
One thing I didn't get to today is that with all this attention on the New York fraud trial, don't forget the one in Florida. Judge Eileen Cannon held a hearing yesterday. Trump is trying to get the trial postponed, of course, until after the election, as innocent people would do. And the judge indicated, she didn't say definitely, but she indicated she might be willing to push the trial back. If that happens, one member of Congress, or I should say Norm Ornstein, who is an emeritus scholar at the right-wing neocon institute, he said that a member of Congress should start impeachment proceedings against Eileen Cannon. So we'll see. We can't take our eye off that one. That's the one in which he is slam dunk, no-brainer guilty. Anyhow, folks, I got to run. It's been a slice. I appreciate you listening and calling. The website again, DougBasham.com. My email, Doug@DougBasham.com. We'll do it all over again tomorrow, hopefully with you. Until then, take care.
Are you tired of the same old boring travel shows?
Then tune into the Unscaled Travel Show presented by Diamondback Land Surveying each Saturday at 2 p.m. on KSHP. I'm Jeremy Long, the Full Metal Traveler, and along with my wife Amy, we'll take you to places you've never heard of.